Our guest today is Karalynn Cromeens from the Cromeens law firm, and we are talking about the legal issues that exist around contractors and subcontractors and construction. And there's a lot of them. And a lot of them exist around contracts and negotiations and these types of things that don't seem like a huge deal on the front end, but if things go sideways, there can be an enormous amount of pain. And Karalynn is the perfect person to teach us about this. She comes from this world. Her background, kind of born and raised, salt of the earth, blue collar, around in and around the trades. And this is what the focus of her law firm is helping contractors avoid these painful lessons by having good legal counsel. And I could not be more pleased to bring you this conversation, especially if you're a contractor or if you think you're going to go into business for yourself as a contractor. She wrote a book about it. It's called Quit Getting Screwed, and we will link to that. And so this will be a good teaser, a good place to start. But for those of you who are in business, turn up the volume and let's enjoy this interview with Karalynn Cromeens from the Cromeens law firm. Thank you, first off, for taking the time out of your day and away from your other clients and family and such to be with us. And we'll talk about the nitty-gritty of subcontractors and contracts. But as an attorney, my first question, how does craftsmanship show up in your trade and in your world? And what does good craftsmanship mean to you?
Well, I think to me, good craftsmanship is crafting my business to help my client be successful, right? What can I do to make sure that they're successful? And that a lot of that's like how my customer service, my approach. I'm always following up, and I'm always doing surveys and making sure that my team's on board with, we're always here. We have 24-hour turnaround on any client questions. I offer things on a flat fee as much as possible, because one of the things that attorneys can be known for is we're unpredictable in pricing. We don't know, we're expensive. And so I think that is, really dialing into knowing my customer and knowing what would work for them. And so I've crafted my business around that, around, my clients.
For contract, not just for contractors, but for everybody, going to that point of calling an attorney, you mentioned the unpredictability of fees, but that's an escalation for a lot of people, even just like, who do I call? How do I get there? So should people maybe we'll just talk about the nitty gritty with subcontractors. How soon should a subcontractor bring an attorney into their orbit, on their team? What are the options for doing that, that aren't like red alert, once things are probably too late for you to fix it very much? Maybe it's like a dentist, like preemptive work or something. So when does that all like happen?
Yeah, absolutely. No, so, I can help you when the fire is there, but I'm much more effective at keeping you out of fires. So come see me on the front end. Like, if you're in business and you're signing contracts, you should probably know what those things mean. And I review those on for a flat fee. If you are clients are hiring you, you need to have a contract. I don't care how small your job is. We can do terms and conditions, or you can do, a contract that's really in plain English. And so really come to me when you're just setting up. We can talk about what it looks like. And then when you're ready, you have some money, you can hire me. Or if you're really trying to scale your business to go to that next level, I think it's really essential on the front end. Obviously, I'm here for disputes and whatever, but I find that we can get in front of that and not have disputes with some, simple things like well-written contracts and a collection strategy, and just having that all on the front end. And a lot of my job is, hey, I got this issue. They're saying this. What are my options, and what should I do? And the first thing is, obviously, you got to call back and try to work something out before you get an attorney involved, and they feel a little bit more confident about their situation. So
yeah. Now, this may depend on the specific type of work that the subcontractor does, but I'm sure there's a lot of these tradesmen who can operate their whole business more or less off of one contract because the work is relatively similar. And I'm sure for those folks, you would say, like, certainly, get a great one, and then you're kind of good to go. You modify it on your own from there. But I also know there's some contractors, and maybe this is more general contractors, where the jobs can vary quite a bit. So how much modification of a contract should a subcontractor or contractor be doing on their own, or is that something they have to figure out as their business unfolds over the years.
So, I mean, on residential contractors that are being hired by homeowners, that basically the only thing that changes is the scope of work. Something definitely we can do over just you can get a template and you change out the scope of work and the payment terms and everything else stays the same. Where you have a lot of variances is mostly on the commercial side. And whether you're working directly for the owner or a subcontractor, there is so much information in those contracts and so many things that are written in the language that most people can't understand that you really need to know what they say in plain English. And then you can evaluate the risk, right? Um, because then you can decide what you want to negotiate. I think there are some things definitely on the commercial side that should be negotiated and met in the middle on the residential side. If we're just clearing up front about the main purpose of a contract is to manage expectations of the parties, and
Mm-hmm.
we can do that really well and easily on the residential side with a clearly written contract. It's way more convoluted on the commercial side, so
Mm-hmm.
it really kind of depends, but definitely needed one, and want to understand what you're signing and what you're agreeing to before you sign it.
So you said you guys will review contracts for a flat fee. What is that? What is a flat fee? What does it cost to have you review one?
So zero to 15 pages is $550,
Oh,
and then 15 to 30 pages is 1,050, and then after that it's hourly. And I usually don't look at like the exhibits, the scope documents. I just look at the guts of the contract that have like the terms and conditions.
yeah, that's not bad at all for the confidence. If it was a big job or a big contract, that could really help. So
Absolutely.
you mentioned the word scope a couple times. Can you? And I don't know if that's a legal term. It must be to some extent, but can you define that a little bit? Because I know we've got scope. We've also got what the homeowner or the customer is thinking about, which is bid, I guess, or the cost. So what are these? What is scope? Can you define that a little?
Yeah, so scope of work is what you're hired to do. And so as a residential contractor, if you put out a bid and say I'm going to do this work for this price, you can attach that into the contract as exhibit A, and this is my scope of work, right? On the residential side, it's real clear, real easy. On the commercial side, they're two different things. If you are a residential contractor and you put a bid out, and you get a contract back, you're never hired to do your bid. You're hired to do the scope of work that's attached to that contract. So that in that situation, that can be two very different things, and we need to look at them appropriately to make sure that if we're signing a scope on a commercial contract, that there's something we didn't miss or that was added in since we did our bid.
Oh,
So,
interesting. So it's almost like the bid would be like a letter of intent or like a ballpark,
mhm,
but the scope of work is what actually matters in terms of the nitty gritty
absolutely.
wording and all that.
Absolutely. And they can be different. And that's that, especially if you're new and you're considering commercial work, knowing that you're not hired to do your bid, that you're hired to do the scope of work is something that can bite you in the butt real big if you don't know the difference.
Interesting. Okay. Do you see a lot of contractors? Well, I kind of know the answer, but maybe this is one of the reasons why contractors will focus. They'll kind of be, I do commercial. Others will kind of do residential. There's a lot of different reasons why they vary so much. I would assume this is probably one of them.
Absolutely. And so, like, in my mind, legally, they're two completely different creatures, right? Like, the first thing I want to know when I talk to you are you a residential and commercial? And even the residential contractors, when they're talking commercial jobs, they're working on commercial projects, but they're working directly for the owner. And so they can have their own contract. And most of the times, if they have a residential contract, they can use that same contract to have the owner sign. It's
Hmm.
just when we're on the commercial side and we're signing someone else's contract that things can get sticky.
Because the GC will be the one to give that sub their contract that their attorney prepared.
Correct. And I think when it all started out, everybody did anything on a handshake, and then attorneys got involved and they started drafting contracts. And attorneys draft contracts from the position of what's best for my client, but thinking that there will also be a negotiation. And
Oh,
subcontractors just want to go to work, so they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll just sign it." And so these subcontracts have gotten so one-sided that they're really dangerous creatures, right?
huh.
I mean, they are. I wrote a whole book called "Quit Getting Screwed" because that's how bad the crap in these subcontracts are. Because
Wow.
it's really and here's the thing is that subcontractors are really good at what they do. They love they're good at their trade, and they don't realize the things that are in these contracts. Like they think there's some set of rules that protect them, and there are not.
Yeah,
And
and in a
so,
lot of ways, they're at the disadvantage because a lot of laws, from my understanding, are more designed to protect the common man, like the owner, the people who know the least about the trade. They're the ones who have the most default level of protection, right?
yeah. So, like in every state has something that is required to be in a residential contract to protect owners. There is
Right.
not that same level of protection for a commercial subcontractor. Basically, on
Wow.
that side, whatever you sign will be used against you. Residential homeowner, they think, they don't want to get, messed up by a bad contractor. So there's all, every state has a little something. If not, like California has a lot of requirements of what needs to be in your residential contract. And Texas
Wow.
even still has some. So
Um, I know from your bio that you kind of come from a family of maybe not subcontractors, but certainly working type folk, and you work with them now. What is it that you wish that these blue collar business owners and stuff knew, or what are you constantly trying to hammer in their head? And what is it that what do you like about working for them and with them? Besides just that, that's maybe how you were kind of raised, but maybe there's more to it.
no, I mean, I think that's my purpose here is to help save the family business because that's what most of these are, right? And I've seen personally the struggles that run through a family business, whether that's signing commercial contracts or waiting to get paid because you haven't gotten paid and you're afraid you can't make payroll. And so these pressures I felt personally, and so I come at it with, okay, how can we help you streamline this, make this a better process to protect your business and make sure it will stay in existence. What really got me passionate about this is that my grandfather owned an excavation company and actually went out of business because he didn't get paid. And if
Oh,
I had been around, I could have helped save that. And so that's really my goal. And when I talk to residential contractors or contractors who are out there, that's home to me. I'm much more comfortable in a room full of contractors than I am in a room full of lawyers, right? It's
hmm.
just that's not where I'm from. That's not, I grew up in rural Illinois. My mom was a waitress, my dad was a farmer. So, just salt of the earth people. I'm not. And I think that's what I'm good at.
Wow. What? Why is it generally that contractors don't get paid? I know a lot of times there's just some dirtbag who just can see an opportunity to screw someone because that's just what business is to them. I know those people exist, but I know also a lot of times someone doesn't get paid and it's because the money's not there yet on the other side. It's almost like a good faith type of a thing, and it's kind of like people kind of all kind of be like, "Oh shucks, like sorry, I don't know, nothing I can do." So what do you like when you go down the list of why people aren't getting paid to help people understand what these risks are? I'm sure there's someone listening who has not experienced this yet, who is a sub, and we need to convince them that even though you're a handshake kind of salt of the earth type, these things happen anyways.
No, exactly. And so a couple of things is especially on the residential side, having a clear contract of when payments expected and what would happen if payments not received. So like if you have, a remodel contractor, this project's going to take, a couple months, setting forth in the contract, we're going to reach this milestone. We're going to send you an invoice. You have 5 days to pay it. If you don't, we're going to stop work, right? But the client receiving that invoice lets them know for sure that they owe you the payment, right? So sometimes it's just a miscommunication of I'm not exactly sure did they reach this milestone yet or not, and so they
Mm,
haven't been paid. And
mm,
then the contractor gets upset because he hasn't been paid, and they're like, and so just being clear about when payments expected, and then having the right to stop work within 5 days if you're not paid is another huge thing. And then if it goes beyond that, knowing what the lien rights are for your state, hugely important, and make sure you follow those to a T. If you have to file a lien, you can, because what a lien is it's a security interest in the property you're supplying labor and material to, which is a huge leverage to make sure that you will get paid at some point in time.
So I know best practice, like if you're getting your contractor's license, they'll say you always file a lien at the start of every job. But in the real world, it doesn't happen like that. It just doesn't. But are you still advising all your clients like, but you still need to try and do your best to do it no matter what? Or maybe talk about how you advise people about filing liens.
No worries. And so what I do is first off, a lien is a part of a consistent collection strategy, right? We want to create a collection strategy that's going to improve your cash flow, but also make sure you have a valid lien at the end of the day if you have to file one. And the thing is that is like all 50 states are something very different on what that looks like. So, like in Texas, you have to send a notice out the 15th day of the second month. In North Carolina, you got to register online with the project within 10 days of first work or 20 days of first work.
Hmm.
So, it really depends on the rules of the state. And so, I think Oregon, if I'm right, has a pre-lien notice, which just says within 20 days of starting work, you got to let the owner know that, hey, I could file a lien if I'm not paid.
Hmm.
And then that if you miss that step in the beginning, then you're not going to be able to file a lien. So knowing what that is and make sure we preserve that and do it right. I'm not being overly aggressive, but and with lien stuff, like I said, it's different in all 50 states, but they have timelines, right? Which has deadlines. You can always do things early, you just can't do them late. So what I really try to do with my clients is come up with a system that works with their cash flow and the lien rights and send out notices accordingly. And most
Hmm.
of the time, if you send out notices and make phone calls, you can get paid without ever having to file a lien. But a lien
Oh,
is great security to have anyways.
I'm sure there's software packages that contractors can use that kind of integrate this with the actual invoices themselves and stuff. I mean, that's a little outside of law, but is there any easier way to do this? Like automatic, how come robots can't do this for the contractors right now?
um, so I realized that was an issue. I founded Subcontractor Institute, which has the rules for all 50 states on how to file a lien. And you can buy the lien forms there. What I do, and I saw this as an issue, is I offer lien collection service either on a flat fee or on a subscription pricing, right? So that you can outsource your collection department, and that'll include the phone calls, the lien processing, and the filing. There are some lien filing services out there online, but they're not very successful because they don't follow the rules that are different in all 50 states.
Hmm.
And having an invalid lien is more dangerous than having no lien at all.
Oh,
And so,
why is that?
because a lien, when if you file it correctly, is an interest on the property, you could stop any sale. You could stop it from refinancing or getting a loan on the property. It's basically an interest on a real property, just like a mortgage. So
Uh huh.
it's got great strength, but if you mess it up and do it wrong, then you're wrongfully stopping this owner from selling the property or getting a
Oh,
loan.
geez.
So
So you could be like you getting sued for that. And I was also
exactly.
thinking you could, if you thought you had a lien, it might cause you to purchase materials or proceed into a job with a little more like conviction because you're like, well, I'm in good shape, da da da. And if it was wrong, you could get to the other side of it and have zero lien, and maybe you wouldn't have bought whatever 20 air conditioners or something if you had known.
Exactly. And so I think if you know what the rules are and you talk to like a qualified attorney and know what the rules are for your state and have that in your pocket, and
Yeah,
then you can move forward with the confidence of here's when I have to take actions and make sure that, I preserve my lien rights because
yeah,
it is great leverage. And like I said, if you do it right, most of the times you don't even have to file it. It's just the threat of filing the lien. Also,
yeah,
yeah. So it's a Subcontract Institute is a great resource. All that's on there for free because I don't think contractors realize what a great resource and leverage that it actually is.
so what is it exactly? This is a resource that you've put together. You mentioned some of the things in there, but is it like did you say it's free?
Yep, it's free.
Oh,
It's
wow.
free. I'm actually in the process of turning it into a nonprofit. It's just my free educational platform because I think there's a lack of contractor information out there like this in a way that can be easily understood.
Yes.
And so I want to put it out there. I want people to have the information and to know how to protect themselves.
Oh, that's really cool. We will probably be talking about this a lot on our channel. I stumbled into something like that related to real estate and like landlord tenant law. Like some law firm in Tucson, Arizona had put up all this material. I don't know how I found it, but the confidence I had knowing it was like from this, law firm as opposed to, these like Google images of like, oh, you want a
Exactly.
contract? What kind of contract would you like? And
Yeah,
they
well, at
pop up
least.
and it's like you said, it's almost like feels like you're doing more harm than good. Although I've
Mhm.
downloaded things from time to time, but when it's coming from a real attorney in the U.S. and Texas, no less, that is really valuable. Wow, that's really great.
Thank you. I mean, that's a project of mine because, like I said, my true mission is to help these businesses run better businesses, and they have so many resources they don't even know that they have. And like
Yeah,
most guys, they're out there just trying to bust their hump every day and make payroll and take care of their family. They don't have anybody that's looking out for them.
I read the story on your website, and you could probably tell 100 versions of this story of a masonry contractor who was, going about the job, and the client happened to be extremely, I'll say annoying, but it's the type of person micromanaging and nitpicking and stuff. And actually, my dad has a story. We might have shared it with the audience about a similar job he did, where basically the homeowner was over his shoulder the entire time, undermining, second guessing, and it caused like some major issues on the job he had. It ended up where he kind of wrote the lady a check for everything and just walked away, which was probably the best case scenario. But to your point about contractors feeling alone, not only can they be alone, but they can be alone and be like publicly viewed as like the villain. Like, this contractor came in and da da da, and look, they never even finished this. And what a lot of people don't realize about construction is these things are kind of normal, in terms of, I don't know, scuffing a wall or drilling a hole in the wrong spot. Like, for contractors and, someone like yourself who sees this world, that's not crazy. But if it's the first time ever experiencing something like that, it might feel really crazy. And like, you got to be like, I'm going to get my attorney and we're going to da da da. And then what happens when it goes to court? Like in the story you described, the
Mhm.
guy lost. It's
No,
so
exactly,
sad.
and, like, the huge what that guy could have really done different, and I try to couch my clients on this, is let the client know that there'll be a punch out or a walkthrough where they, the hole that was drilled in the wrong place will be filled in, that this stuff, as we move along, these things are gonna happen, but will be taken care of in the end.
Yeah.
Because the homeowner has a set of expectations in their mind, who gave him to, maybe their brother-in-law or somebody said it should go this way. And so now you're going to be judged on those expectations unless you take the time to go through your contract and say, here's our reasonable expectations based on schedule, based on material prices, all of this. And here's the possibility of change orders. If you do that, you've changed their expectations and you will be judged accordingly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's when we don't have a contract and we don't do those things that we end up in those situations. And, a jury is made up of homeowners, not people that run construction companies.
Yeah.
So it's a very jaded audience. You have to try to
Yeah.
convince. All they're saying is, "Oh my God, you left the homeowner's house like that. How could you?"
Yeah. And there are scumbag contractors who really do take the money and run. And so it's like a few bad apples kind of a thing. Like, it can really put the guy in a tough spot who was definitely maybe doing like a workman-like manner, all the normal ways, but the contractor who's never seen it, or I'm sorry, the homeowner who had never seen it before is freaking out, and maybe in the middle of the job, just like in that story, just nukes it, and then everybody loses. So what have you seen over the last few years with COVID? And there's been a lot of, I got to imagine, stress on contracts from lockdowns and such. So what have you seen among subcontractors over that time period? And is anything changing to your messaging, going forward after this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like COVID and it's so much, well, I have to say COVID's been really good for the residential contractors, right? Because nobody's going anywhere. They're all spending on their money on their house, improving it. And I've talked to contractors from all across the country that are busy and booked out, which has been a great thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it really is having that contract, and then having two things in that contract is that material price escalation. If you don't have that in your contract, you could have to eat the price of that escalation. So
Mm-hmm.
I have some blog articles with the exact language you could pop in your contract that says, if prices increase more than 2% from the time I bid this job, I'm entitled to do the difference. You can also do a cost plus contract. I also put in those contracts about, potential delays because we can't get materials or appliances or things like that, and just being upfront. This is my promised completion date, but it has these variables that I can't control. And so that way the homeowner knows. And then also I have contractors that put in their contracts the opposite. Like, if the homeowner takes too long to pick something out, then they get more time added to the schedule. Because I think that's another big issue that they may face. So
Yeah, you're right, especially in residential where there's, they're making a decision on their lifetime kitchen remodel, and they're like, "Don't rush me, please." So
exactly, and you're like, okay, I don't want to rush you, but then you're gonna push back the schedule, and just putting that in the contract that if you take longer than 3 or 4 days, we're gonna have to add those days on the contract.
you kind of answered this by talking about contractors, and you're from this world, but as as clients, what are subcontractors and what are contractors like generally? Because, for example, as employers, they can be a little tough. They got to kind of crack a whip and like and push and be brutal. What are contractors like as a customers for you?
Well, man, I have the gamut, right? I have the guy that won't even answer the phone if I call him 3 times, right? It's like he's like, you handle it. Cool, I'll
Yeah.
handle it, but I still need your input sometimes. To the other side is like telling me what I should do. And I'm like, okay, I'll take your suggestion, but here's what I think we should do. And like, I know you're good at what you do, but I'm good at what I do too. So
Hmm.
it really kind of depends because I think you have the same type of business owners. Those people that are control freaks, those people are a little more relaxed. And I think you got to be somewhere in the middle to do it right. Right. So
Yeah.
the main thing, is that sometimes you might even, I'm just going to give you my advice and you can decide. And I'll let you know, I'm just going to lay out all the options and what I think potential outcomes are. And then you
Yeah.
get to decide, the structure of the case.
I hired an attorney once. I was the only construction project, the permit that I pulled, and I was the kind of owner builder, and I was a little out of my lane, but that's okay. Um, and the process of getting it permitted with the county was extremely frustrating. It took years and so much back and forth. And I definitely take some of the, maybe not responsibility, but a lot of it, yeah, a lot of it was my fault because I was kind of new to it. Also, a lot of things went really sideways with the county. And at the point when I was at my breaking point, I kind of brought an attorney on. I was like, look, this is what they're doing to me. I'm getting so screwed. And he gave me the advice, like, yeah, you are getting so screwed. Please don't sue them. You will
Or
lose
even
even
worse.
more.
Yeah.
And like, and I was like, I had this like, righteous indignation. I was kind of like feeling like loading my gun and like, I'm going to da da da. And looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank goodness that this guy kind of like gave me that advice. Can you talk about that a little bit? How often do people need to cool their jets when they kind of call you? Maybe they got a valid issue, but how often do things need to escalate in that way, like with the court?
Well, the first thing I say, if it's based solely on pride, it's never anything you want to do. Pride is entirely too expensive.
Hmm.
I've taken those lawsuits, and clients have paid me $50,000, $60,000 over a $3,000 claim that could have been paid. And so
Ah,
that's the conversation that I'm going to have if a homeowner comes to you and even though they're not right, they want $3,000. And I'm
yeah,
going to tell you, you're better off pay them the $3,000 and move on, even if they're not right, because I know what it can turn into, right? I know that it can turn into very expensive litigation, and that doesn't win for anybody, right? So the situation, the conversations I have are, what can we learn from this, and how can we do it better next time? But another thing that residential contractors should know, that I think a lot of people don't know, is that almost every state has a process where before a residential contractor can be sued, the homeowner has to give them an opportunity to cure any defects. So it's not automatically going to lawsuit. So during that process, I really try to work with the contractor and the homeowner to reach a deal to get it
oh,
done so it doesn't go any further. And it's maybe stretching my client a little further than they want to go, but it's only because I've seen the alternative. I'm like, if you want to write me $10,000 a month checks to take this case to trial, we could do that. But it's not the best you could ever hope for in court is to break even. And most of the times you won't. And that
mm,
doesn't even take into account to your time going to trial, your time going through your documents, your time getting your deposition taken, and just the stress of that situation. There's a value to that, to not have to do that.
yeah,
I'm not afraid of a fight. I'm really good at it, but it's not the best way to spend your company's money.
yeah. And it's difficult. It can be difficult when you're like the contractor, the person getting screwed, to have that perspective
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's so emotional. You're so
You
like
know, and then
emotionally wrapped
sometimes
up in it.
they won't hire me because they don't think I want to fight. And it's not that I don't want to fight. It's just I want to take a smart fight.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
do you are you doing mediation then when you say you bring parties? Is that part of like the services that a firm like yours offers as well?
well, yeah, I do. So, like, I am a mediator, but I usually don't mediate. So, mediator is like an independent third party that two parties that are fighting go to try to resolve their dispute. And so, I'll represent a party in mediation. And so, mediation is a very helpful tool to get all the parties together and really put all the issues on the table and try to hash out a deal.
Hmm.
And so, it's not binding. Most parties can be successful if we're going to be reasonable at settling it, and then then it's over and it's
Oh,
done. So
so
it's
you're okay. I see. So you're representing your client still, but instead of before a jury or a judge, you're representing them at a mediation setting. And is that what you meant when you said, like, we can work out a deal, or is there a step even below that? Because sometimes you just need, I don't know, is there a step below mediation, to really solve these things?
Yeah,
What does
so
that look like?
you get that letter from the client, from your homeowner client, and you can go out and do an inspection, or go and see what they're saying, if it's valid or not, and then you make an offer. If
Yeah,
that's a reasonable offer, whether it's to fix it, to pay them money, or to have somebody else come fix it and try to settle it at that point. And you can go back and forth on those offers until you get to something that is doable.
yeah,
And that's how most of them settle. And the courts were getting backed up with all these residential contractors were getting sued unreasonably, which is why I think all these things came into play to make this process happen before
yeah,
a residential contractor can be sued.
mm,
Because most of the times it's like, just give us a chance to go fix it, and we will.
yeah, yeah. Speaking of court being such a disaster, or at least um, costly for lots of ways, I I've been watching the highlights from the Johnny Depp trial that's going on right now. I don't know if you have been, but
A little bit. I hear a little bit from I think my husband and my daughter have been watching it sometimes.
oh,
I'm hearing it go back and
it's
forth between them.
insane.
Can you
It's
imagine
it
how painful that is, though?
No, I
Have
can't imagine
your
it.
life just opened up like that in front of everybody.
Well, I had on, it popped on my YouTube autoplay, and what the part that popped on was like a phone recording, this like the most private thing. And not only is it now like in front of the court, but it's like getting streamed to everybody. It's completely insane. And that's obviously a really extreme example, but it still made me think like how much everybody involved is losing. I guess maybe those attorneys are making some money, but
I'm sure. And,
everybody's
and don't be wrong,
losing.
that's he was that his reputation was tarnished, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
to him,
even those attorneys though, because it's like so public that they're getting criticism and taking arrows from their public image, whatever. That I'm like, man, I don't know what it would take for this to be worth it for even the attorneys who are here. I don't know.
and just imagine how they could twist the facts in your case, right?
Yes.
In your mind, your case is so clear your
Yeah.
way. You have no idea what the other side can do to twist and turn the facts to make them something you don't even recognize.
Okay, I know, and man, attorneys, and this gets to like the stereotype, but they're asking these questions. They're so simple, like, "Did you do this? Yes or no?" And you can see the person on the stand
Mm,
being like, "I mean,
maybe.
yes, but that's not." And then they're like, "That's it." And
Objection.
then, oh man, so this whole world is new to me, and it's the times where it comes through, like in movies generally, but like, occasionally, like something like this is a light on this world that it's actually kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
And that I've never been sued yet, and I'm sure maybe it'll happen someday. Like I said, I had that one close call, and then the other legal interaction I had was on that same project. There was a utility company that had some utilities on my property
Hmm.
where they didn't have an easement, and I was trying to build, so they had to move them, and they were not listening. Nothing was happening, and so I kind of reluctantly I escalated, and this attorney sent a letter and solved it. And that was a case where, again, I was so grateful. Like, oh man, this professional cost me whatever
Hmm.
$1,500 for a letter, and it kind of solved the problem. And I just wanted to hug the guy. Like, thank you so much. I spent like 6 months like
Ripping
calling
my hair
the
out. Yeah, exactly.
CenturyLink trying to fix it.
No, absolutely. And then you're like, an efficient attorney can be that way. And that's what, a deal like that, that's what you want, a letter and it's done, right?
Yeah.
That's really the way to go.
You must really get a lot of satisfaction when you have clients who, and maybe some of it you don't know because you're heading off problems that they would have had if you hadn't put their contracts in place before. So
Mhm.
it could be that you don't really get like the huge paydays as if you like
No,
win a case or something, but it's still got to feel good knowing you're protecting people.
no, exactly. I have a lien case I'm working on now where our client's a roofer and he was subcontracted. So there was a GC, the subcontractor, and my client who was a subcontractor on a commercial project. And it's very clear that from October till December of last year, my client worked without getting paid.
Oh,
But apparently the contractor, the subcontractor, the GC was paying for our work. And now it's all coming to light that this guy got paid and didn't pay our guy. And,
oh,
and so I'll probably get him paid. But if I didn't step in and he didn't have a lien, he would have gotten completely screwed.
wow.
And it's like
So
$40,000.
that's can put people out of business. Like it's easy to think of contractors on commercial jobs. There's a lot of, well, they can go out of business as well, but $40,000 is plenty enough for someone to be like, you know what, I'm just gonna go work at Home Depot now because I can't make this work anymore.
No, and that, I think that, that's why you have a hard time, especially when going on your own, that people are don't want to choose the trades as as a business because
Yeah.
it can be so cutthroat.
How do you advise people that this is like a part of our messaging that we're trying to improve, but it's something that I even not about struggle, but think about, which is transitioning from someone who likes working, who likes tools and using their hands, they like to build. And that's what they want to do. And that's what they do. And then like, oh, I'm going to make a business out of this, but it's just so different than the actual trade skill. So how do you, and again, this is not quite maybe what your business is made of, but what do you see among the people who successfully make that transition that stacks the deck in their favor from being able to succeed in business versus what type of people are really you kind of wash out for that for all these reasons.
No, absolutely. And I think everybody gets into it because they love it. And very fast, they realize that in order to keep doing what you love, you have to learn how to run a business, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so very fast, they get moved out of that role of being the actual hands on into running the business part. And I think the successful ones are intentional, right? They're intentionally at getting a bookkeeper to manage the books and knowing if they're making any money on the jobs. They're intentional about having a contract that protects them. They have a goal and they're headed somewhere, and here's are the steps to how they're going to get there, right? As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just going through the day to day effort just to keep the doors open, having somewhere you're heading, and then taking those steps to get there. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
it's bookkeeping, it's legal, it's all of those things, it's sales, it's, customer service, all of those things put together. But if you're intentional about each one of those things at a time and then putting it as part of the whole, it's that's what matters, right?
Yeah. So with contractors, it's always easy to imagine like, oh, we're going to negotiate this contract we get back, or I'm going to file these liens and let everybody know up front. But in reality, it can be very choppy doing that when you're also trying to like get the job, and you're competing on
Hmm.
price with some other subs, and so that's hard. How do you advise people do that? Like how much negotiating, maybe it's just case by case, but should people negotiate when they get a contract back, or do you kind of just, are there a couple things that are like red lines that you say like never allow this to go through? What kind of things should someone look at in order to maybe decide whether they should push and negotiate when they want the job?
And here's the thing is that if they're reading the contract and have questions, that's a good thing, right? I'm all for that. It's when they take advantage of you, or I think sometimes contractors will lack confidence in their work or their ability, and they'll give it away for free. And there are people who will take advantage of that, absolutely. And so just you have a set process, you have those things in there for a reason, and knowing that you're worth those things in there. Like I said, ask questions, and there may be some things that you're willing to give on. But if someone comes up and redlines your whole contract and wants to bulldoze you, they never get any better than the first day. I promise
Yeah.
you. And the relationship is not going to get any better than when you're, during the, the honeymoon phase. Like, I'm so excited with this project and you're the greatest contractor ever. It's only going to, and if it's already degrading, and that's the biggest thing I tell my contractors is trust your gut. Because
Yeah.
90% of the contractors that come into my office with a problem, like, I knew I shouldn't have done this job. There was this red flag. There was this
Mm.
red flag, and I did it anyways. It's not something I normally do, but I did it anyways. Those are the guys that get in trouble. And it's not because,
Interesting.
and it's usually because they're doing something nice. This is
Yeah.
my mom's friend, and I did extra work for them, and I didn't even charge them. And those are the guys that get in trouble. It's just crazy to me, but that's who I see. That's what happens.
And flipping that concept on its head, if you, yeah, let's say you do mark up let's say you get a contract back from a GC, you're a sub, and you want to negotiate a couple things. It's almost like maybe you could lose a job, but it's an opportunity to see in the future if they give you big pushback, like no way, we're not going to adjust that. Then now what was once just like a red flag is now like a red siren, like beeping. Like if they're not going to understand your perspective on that, then to your point, maybe
No, and I
not
think
worth
I
the
think and
job.
I think you too, you come because on the commercial side, if you're dealing with a project manager, they might not understand the effect of what you're trying to change. And so letting them know, hey, there's this pay when paid clause. That means the general contractor has to pay. I mean, the owner has to pay the general before I can get paid. That a lot can go wrong in that relationship that I don't have a control over. So I'm
Mm,
going to try to negotiate that, and here's why: because I can't afford to float this job cash for labor and materials and just wait to the entire project to get paid. So if you
yeah.
come at it from that way, and then something in the middle, you're not. If you're being reasonable and the other side is being unreasonable, yeah, let me somebody else take the
Yeah.
unreasonableness.
How common is that paid when paid clause?
In every commercial subcontract,
So they try to default that. The default is,
the pay when
I
paid or
guess
pay
that
when
would mean
paid.
they don't really take much risk. I guess they just kind of
Absolutely.
pass the risk on. Wow. And
Yes,
they,
and so, yeah, and here's the thing is that, and you don't get to stop working if you're not paid,
well, right.
because technically the GC doesn't owe you payment under the contract yet if they haven't been paid. So they're
Wow.
not in default, they're not in breach of the contract.
And that's the kind of thing that it's, if it's a signed contract, it seems almost like unfair, not like it should be illegal, but like kind of dirty. But you're saying no, 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 that's totally a fair agreement,
It's
assuming
not
both
fair,
parties
but
agree.
if you sign it, it'll be used against you. It'll be held against you. Absolutely.
No judge will be like, "Oh, that's a dirty trick. We're not going to
Yeah.
let that."
No, I've tried that before. It doesn't work.
Yeah,
They're like, but you signed the contract. But Your Honor, no,
yeah.
signed the contract. I'm like,
Is that written generally? Is like paid when paid, or is that kind of obfuscated in like legalese? That is like, what should people? How do you look for that? Is it? I guess you just read it, but I
yeah.
guess maybe that's the answer. Read the contracts
Or have somebody do it for you.
or have
Usually
someone
it
do it.
says as a condition to pay of payment to the subcontractor is payment from the owner or something along that. Sometimes they say pay when paid. But if you
Oh,
go to the payment section, there'll be in there that the GC is not obligated to pay the subcontractor until they're paid by the owner, something along those lines.
okay. Okay, here's maybe my last question for you, and this is for me something I haven't understood well about attorneys. But I know attorneys are licensed in states, which means they're allowed to practice law in that state. But
Mhm.
then there's all these parts of law that are like, yeah, except for, I can't think of one. I don't know, filing this or that. There's other things that, like patents and those types
Mhm.
of things. Those can be nationwide. So, for subcontractors and contractors, can they hire someone, and you're in Texas, maybe you're licensed in other states, what do they need to know about how to find an attorney where they're at, and who's going to be familiar with their state and able to represent them? How important is it that the person's like local?
Well, so local depends on if you're going to litigation, right? So as an attorney, I represent contractors from all over the country on contract negotiations, collections, all of that stuff. I'm licensed in a bunch of states now. I'm getting licensed, and I have contacts in all 50 states, so I could litigate. But to litigate, to go to court, you need to be licensed. But with all this other stuff, you don't necessarily have to be licensed in that state. Just be an attorney.
Okay.
So that's it. But the main things for construction attorneys is find an attorney that knows construction, because yes, being a lawyer helps you know the court process, but the construction industry by itself is its own industry and is its own creature, and if you don't understand that, you cannot be very helpful to somebody in the
Yeah.
construction industry as an attorney. So like,
Yeah.
people who are new to me, it doesn't take very long for them to realize that, oh yeah, I speak your language. It's
Yeah.
lien waivers, change orders, concrete, PSI, all of the things, right?
Yeah.
If they're not talking your language, then you need to find somebody that can, and it's more
Yeah.
so on the construction side.
That makes so much sense, because just because someone's passed the bar and has, I don't know, done a bunch of divorces or something, like that's great.
Hmm.
But yeah, there could, like you described, that pay when paid clause, like that may not
They might not
jump
know what
out
to
at
look
them.
for. Exactly. Or they might not know what the effects of it are, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
I would never do your divorce. I would never draft your will because I wouldn't be any good at it, because that's not what I
Yes.
do. So they're kind of just like a doctor, kind of niche
Yes.
on what we do. And, there are lots of good construction lawyers out there, that are just as passionate as I am. That's one thing I can say. Have talked to attorneys from around the country, and most, because we're usually representing the little guy, so we're very passionate about what we do, and
Yeah.
it's very much justice based, and that's how we feel about it. So
Yeah. That is so cool. It's a great feeling, and I'm hoping I'm sure there will be someone listening who this is helpful for, because there's this feeling, maybe our listeners could understand it, like when you're hiring a contractor, when you find the right contractor or a sub who has the exact tool that you need for this exact job, and they're cool, and it's like, oh,
thank
thank
God.
yes, I will. I'm going to keep your number for the till my dying days. You're so grateful you added that contact. They're so valuable. In addition to their expertise and tools, they're usually more affordable because they can do the thing you need day in, day out. So they understand it. So like your fees for contract review and such are probably going to be more affordable, or certainly no more expensive than someone who's learning it all for the first time, because it's a, specialization. So that, I really think that's amazing. And what a valuable ally
Mhm.
for the trades to have an attorney and a whole office, I guess, who's kind of thinking of them first, right?
Exactly. And like you pick up the phone, like I got this nasty email from a client. What do I do? And be like, here, do this response once, and if you have to do it again, then CC me on it. Right. So just
Yeah.
really to help you before you before you get into the courtroom, before you, like I said, that's my whole hope is to keep you out of it. So
Yeah. Well, Karalynn, thank you so much. Where do we send people if there is someone who's like, I got a contract right now, I need the next step? How do people get in touch with you if they want to get your help?
sure. I mean, call the office. It's 713-715-7334, or the CromeensLawFirm.com. Or if you can reach out on Facebook, I'm there, Karalynn Cromeens. And then I message people all the time and send them my Calendly link so we can schedule a time to talk, because I find that's the easiest.
Oh, it's amazing. Calendly is the absolute miracle tool, huh?
Like I had a guy that was on my website at 8:30. He sent me a message and we set up a Calendly, and I happened to have a 12:30 open. He's like, "Wow,
I'll
that was
take it.
I was like." It just happened that way today that I had 30 minutes open at 12:30. So
Yeah, it's just increasing efficiency for everybody. Like my
absolutely.
barber, my barber now, because he uses it, and it's like I used to like have to like stop in and see how many people are waiting there. So, and we're just getting so much more efficient. The
I
more
agree.
people who are using this type of technology. Oh, and how do people find the Subcontractor Institute? Where is that material at?
It's subcontractorinstitute.com. And I
Oh,
had mentioned before I wrote the book Quick Getting Screwed, which is all about subcontracts. And on there for free, I teach all 20 chapters of all the bad crap that are in subcontracts. And there's like 80 free forms, and just a really great place to find some great information.
well, thank you so much for coming. We'll do it again. I hope everybody enjoyed this. Karalynn, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me.